My friend called me and he said, listen, you're really famous. You're just a nuisance right now. But if you hurt them, if you cost them money, you will never work again.
I've always known how Hollywood tries to choke artists that don't comply, but nothing prepared me for what Rob Schneider exposed about just how low the industry can go in trying to intimidate you.
He said this to me, you have a daughter. Is it fair that she has to do this fight too? And I was like, whoa.
But this is the perfect case study to speak some hard truths about how Hollywood actually operates. Subscribe to Elites Exposed for more, and just take a look for yourself.
The effect of saying what you did
it was
about health, like did that affect your job prospect?
Absolutely.
Your work?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I got a call from a friend of mine who's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I don't have a lot of those, by the way, but he called me. And I was in Boston, and I just got off, and it was the big whole State Farm affair that happened. And I just got off stage, and I was kind of still shaken by the thing because I'd never been attacked by every newspaper and all this stuff, and the internet was new, and and I was still a working actor at the time, making movies and stuff. My friend called me and he said, "Listen, you're really famous. Now you're just a nuisance right now, but if you hurt them, if you cost them money, you will never work again." And these companies will sue not just you, they'll sue these other places to make sure that you never work again. And I said,
damn.
But I said, but I'm right about this. And he said, somebody's got to stand up. He said, and he said this to me, you have a daughter. Is it fair that she has to do this fight too? And I was like, whoa. That took me out of my knees.
That's very heavy.
It is. It was.
Was this, just to clarify, was this a friend offering you constructive advice, or was this someone threatening you? Or both, maybe?
It was a really good friend who was giving me advice that he thought, and obviously somebody had talked to him, or he just knew enough to know that this is what's happening because that's the world that he travels in. He's a really good guy and a dear friend, and I think he was trying to just help me of what he knew could happen.
And that's why I feel like 2020 was a cultural reset like nothing we've seen in the last century. Because that's the year that Hollywood and the media's illusion of consensus finally broke, when they exposed themselves as absolute hypocrites by silencing anyone that dared question the approved narratives at the time. Rob Schneider was just one more casualty. But maybe there's something deeper, because if you're wondering why movie executives or Hollywood bigwigs would be so terrified of an actor like Rob going against the cultural grain, let me tell you why. It's because Hollywood doesn't really create movies. It manufactures consent for a dozen different industries that it's in bed with. That's where the real money comes from. I'd even go as far as saying that the audience actually has the least amount of leverage on what kind of product Hollywood actually puts out. Because advertisers, regulators, corporate partners, and financial investments are what actually factor into the decision-making far above everything else. And that system knows very well that all of that house of cards will fall unless it's artificially propped up. That's because the moment even a single dissident like Rob Schneider points out that the emperor has no clothes, the entire audience will eventually follow. And then corporate Hollywood will go down the same dustbin of history as we're seeing the corporate media fade into. But here's the problem. As with challenging any corrupt system, there's a first mover problem. Everyone is afraid of being the first person to rebel and the first to put a target on his back. That's the risk that Rob Schneider knew he was inviting by speaking out.
At the same time, he said, you have to be, and I would just tell other people, you have to be smart about this and questioning things, and that we have to stand up, because to not stand up and speak, it's dangerous to stand up and speak, and it's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you money if you stand up and speak your mind. If you stand up, but when you knowingly go along with something that you know is false, that's going to cost you more. And that's something in our society, we have to go by evidence. We have to just confront these lies. We can't continue, or we're going to have a nation of lies. But they said 2/3 of Americans are afraid to speak their mind, 2/3 because they might cause offense. And another third are worried that it might affect their job opportunities. So this is a real thing. We can't continue as a society if everybody's so afraid. That was what Alexander de Tocqueville admired most about America when he came here, was the Frenchman, seeing like people speak their mind here. That is a unique thing. That is unique. The idea of freedom of speech is, there's not an accident that was put first before guns. They know that if you want to really protect society, and your best weapon against tyranny is to be able to speak your mind. to be able to speak freely without reproach and recrimination from your government. That isn't to say there are not consequences for it, but the consequences of not speaking are going to be much, much higher.
And that's one thing you can say about Rob Schneider, because he did in fact pay the price. I don't think I've seen him in the last 5 or 6 years in any big studio production or a mainstream movie anymore. And I don't think that's by Rob's own choice. He made some very powerful people very angry, and they tried to pull the rug from under his career. I mean, he was even being kicked out of some fundraiser events and small comedy clubs at one point last year, all because Rob Schneider wasn't towing the approved line. And if you think about it, there's hardly any amount of star power you can have that's strong enough to overpower that entire cabal of studio executives, because even Oscar-nominated actors like Monique and James Woods have spoken out loud about how the space was squeezed shut for them in the industry. And it was all because of the bad word put out about them by some powerful people up top. Monique's entire career was practically ruined for a decade despite an illustrious Oscars win, simply because she bruised Tyler Perry's ego by enforcing terms of her contract during the movie Precious. In the case of James Woods, he's even shared screenshots of emails he received from executives and agents that decided to drop him because they didn't like his political views. That shows you how powerless most actors truly are when they try to confront the system.
So this young person was telling me, you know, I want to speak my mind and I want to talk about it, but I'm afraid about losing work. And I said, I said, just be judicious. Talk about it in your life, but it will affect your work if you do.
Yeah.
Some people need to stand up, but I said,
did it affect yours?
Absolutely. 100%.
So your friend was right.
My friend was right. He was right. But I want to say that to that young actor, I said, look, you can talk to the makeup person. You can talk to the driver.
Yeah, they'll always agree with you, I've noticed, through long experience.
People who work for a living, they know this is all bullshit.
Yes, they
talk
do.
to your driver, talk to your Uber driver, talk to the makeup person, talk to the boom man between shots.
Exactly.
But don't talk to the producer. Don't talk to the director. Don't talk to the studio executive, because they're all captured. They're stuck in an ideological, woke mind virus, and they're not going to get out of it because it could affect their work, because they don't operate like an actor operates. I just want to get hired. I just want to get work, and every actor just wants to get hired. But they operate from a different perspective. The executives at studios in Hollywood, they know they're going to get fired. They know it. It's just a matter of time. But they operate not what's the best movie, what can I do that is meaningful to me. They don't operate that way. When they make decisions to make projects, they operate like, what will delay my inevitable firing the longest? How do I keep this beach house? How do I keep traveling on weekends? How do I keep dating these beautiful girls who are only dating me because I'm an executive? But it did affect me, but it freed me. And you know what that's like. It does. It liberates you when you no longer feel a slave to the system. Yeah. When they don't own you, you are free.
And that's the most powerful realization he could have had. Because Rob Schneider's new media company called No Apologies Media is his way of rebelling and then competing against that old industry establishment. And that's just the start of that old guard in Hollywood falling like dominoes as more and more actors go independent and tear away all strings of control. But if you want to see what happens when an artist goes all out in his war against the media establishment, watch what happened when Kanye West walked straight into the hornet's nest at TMZ, and subscribe to Elites Exposed for more.